Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a really powerful idea. How modernity, instead of killing off religion like everyone thought it would, actually created this profound crisis of belief. A crisis of choice that honestly still defines our world.
So, back at the dawn of the 20th century, you had thinkers like Nietzsche making these huge, bold predictions. They were convinced that reason and science were just this unstoppable train, and religion, which they basically saw as old-school superstition, was going to get left behind in the dust.
And this idea, well, it got a name, the secularization thesis. This wasn't just some philosopher's daydream, it was a serious theory. It said that as societies modernize, they just naturally get more secular. For a lot of people, this felt like an iron law of history. It was just gonna happen.
But let's just take a look around our world today. A world that is absolutely buzzing with faith and religious energy. You have to ask, was that prediction even close to being right? Okay, let's really get into this. Because, instead of this slow, steady decline into secularism, what we've actually seen is an explosion of religious fervor all over the planet. It kind of seems like the old gods are back, and they are not messing around. And the scale of this is just global. We're talking about a massive Islamic revival stretching from Africa to Asia. Orthodox Christianity is making a huge comeback. You've got powerful Hindu and Buddhist movements. The evidence is just overwhelming. Modernity and passionate belief aren't opposites. They are somehow happening at the exact same time.
Which brings us to the real puzzle here. If that old theory was just plain wrong, and modernity doesn't automatically kill religion, what is its actual effect on how we think about belief and values?
Well, the core insight here is that modernity's biggest punch wasn't on what people believe, but on how they believe. It totally changed the ground rules for belief itself.
See, modernity doesn't necessarily create secularism, but you know what it absolutely creates? Pluralism. And I'm not talking about pluralism as a nice feel-good ideology of tolerance. I mean pluralism as a hard, unavoidable social fact. It's what happens when completely different worlds are forced to share the same street, the same city, the same internet.
And this process is just completely transformative. Think about it. For most of human history, people lived in these tight-knit communities where pretty much everyone shared the same worldview. It was your bubble. But then modernity comes along with its cities and mass media and bam, it shatters those bubbles. The result is something sociologists call cognitive contamination. It just means that when you're constantly seeing how other people live and what they believe, you can't just easily dismiss them as crazy anymore.
So this is the absolute heart of the matter. This massive, monumental shift from a world of fate to a world of choice. In a traditional society, your religion, your job, your identity, all of that was pretty much handed to you. It was a given. But in the modern world, everything becomes a choice. You are forced constantly to ask yourself, who am I? What do I actually believe?
And in this new reality, religion itself is transformed. It's no longer a destiny you inherit, it's a preference you choose. It's almost like you're in this giant supermarket of worldviews, and you have to walk down the aisle and pick one off the shelf. And this makes belief itself feel a whole lot more fragile than it ever did before.
Now, this constant, overwhelming burden of having to choose everything, it creates this intense psychological pressure. And according to the theory we're looking at, this pressure pushes society toward two very dangerous extremes.
And here they are, relativism and fundamentalism. The relativist just embraces the chaos of options and basically concludes that no single truth is really absolute. The fundamentalist, on the other hand, is horrified by all the options and tries to violently shut them all down, hoping to bring back a lost world of absolute certainty. But here's the kicker. They are both children of modernity, reacting to the exact same problem.
Psychologically, you can see why fundamentalism is so tempting. The thinker Erich Fromm called it an escape from freedom. I mean, the anxiety of having to invent your own life, your own meaning from scratch can be terrifying. Fundamentalism offers this seductive way out. Here's a prepackaged set of absolute answers. Stop worrying, stop choosing.
And we can actually see this tension playing out inside established religions, too. Theologians was sort of mapped out three main responses to this pluralistic world. You've got exclusivism, that's the fundamentalist playbook, we're right, everyone else is wrong. Then there's pluralism, the relativist take, hey, all paths lead up the same mountain. And then there's inclusivism, which tries to find some kind of middle ground. This gets at a really fascinating paradox. These two extremes, they're psychologically linked. They're mirror images. The relativist secretly longs for a certainty they can no longer find, while the fundamentalist is secretly suppressing that nagging doubt, the knowledge that their absolute truth was in fact also a choice.
So if both extremes are dangerous dead ends, the nihilism of the relativist on one side and the violence of the fundamentalist on the other, is there another way? Is there a path that lets us hold our beliefs without bigotry, a path that can live with doubt without falling into despair?
So how do we find that path? Well, a really useful idea comes from the sociologist Max Weber. He identified two fundamentally different ways we can approach making moral choices. The first one is the ethic of attitude or conviction. This is the fundamentalist's ethic. You act on your absolute principles no matter what the consequences are. Let the world be damned. But that middle path requires something different. It requires an ethic of responsibility. This forces us to ask, what will actually happen to real people if I do this? It's a way of thinking that demands compromise and a serious focus on outcomes.
And walking this middle path is not easy. It requires a pretty specific set of commitments. It means you have to reject both of those extremes. It means you have to be able to tell the difference between the core of your beliefs and the details that can be debated. And, crucially, it means building and protecting spaces where we can have civil disagreements with people we see not as enemies, but as fellow citizens.
And that leaves us with a final, really provocative thought. Our modern world has forced us into this tough spot, stuck between violent certainty on one side and paralyzing doubt on the other. Finding and building that third path, a way to believe with conviction but live with humility, well, that's the great challenge of our time.